The sky over dead America was a sickly shade of gray, thick clouds crawling like ash across the heavens. What was once a thriving, bustling land had been reduced to crumbling highways, abandoned cities, and fields where no crops grew, only decay. It had been nearly 3 years since the Undead virus spread, sweeping through every major city, tearing down governments, and leaving behind only small pockets of human resistance. Some survivors clung to remote bunkers or fortified towns. Others scavenged the ruins, scraping by on old-world supplies. But most, sadly, had joined the ranks of the walking dead, their hollow eyes and twisted limbs a reminder of how fast everything had fallen apart. Tonight, however, something strange stirred on the outskirts of the ruined city of Harbor's End. Major Ilara Vance crouched behind a collapsed wall, her breath calm despite the distant sound of growling undead. Her uniform, sleek black, lightweight, with no official insignia, marked her as something different. She wasn't just another survivor or a leftover soldier from a failed government unit. She was part of a force few even knew existed, the Obsidian Unit. "Eyes on the target," whispered Riker, the tech specialist, his voice a faint buzz in her earpiece. Ilara adjusted the scope on her silenced rifle. Below, a cluster of zombies shambled around an overturned bus, their grotesque forms half hidden by the thick fog rolling in from the bay. But that wasn't what concerned her. She was watching something else, a small group of humans, barely teens, trapped inside the bus. They were panicked, pushing against the rear door, their faces pale with terror. "Squad, positions," Ilara murmured softly. To her left, Kale, the close-quarters fighter, slid into place with his twin blades glinting faintly. To her right, Sienna, the sniper, settled in behind a cracked billboard, her long-range rifle steady. "We do this clean, we do this fast," Ilara continued. "Riker, give me a diversion." "Sienna, cover the east side." "Kale, you're with me on extraction." A faint beep confirmed the commands. Riker, stationed on a rooftop nearby, worked his magic. Within seconds, a timed flash device rolled across the street, a harmless pulse designed to emit a burst of light and high-pitched sound. To humans, it was barely noticeable. To zombies, whose heightened senses were drawn to noise and movement, it was like a dinner bell. The moment the device went off, the undead turned sharply, groaning, their rotting heads swiveling toward the flash. They began stumbling away from the bus, following the distraction. "Move!" Ilara hissed, sprinting forward with Kale on her heels. They reached the back of the bus in seconds. The kids inside were pounding on the door, their faces filled with desperation. Ilara pressed a finger to her lips, signaling silence, before quickly pulling open the latch. "Come on," she whispered urgently. The teens scrambled out, wide-eyed and shaking. Ilara quickly counted 5, 2 girls, 3 boys, all under 15. They were thin, starved-looking, but alive. "We're here to help," she said, her voice steady but firm. "Stay low. Follow Kale. We're getting you out of here." Kale nodded, drawing his blades and leading the kids through a narrow alley. Suddenly, a low, guttural snarl echoed through the fog. Ilara spun, rifle up, just as a massive figure emerged from the mist. It was no ordinary zombie. This one was larger, twisted, its body mutated by time and infection. Thick, corded muscle rippled under its ragged flesh, and its eyes gleamed with an unnatural light. "Riker, we've got a problem," Ilara muttered, backing up slowly. "I see it," Riker responded, his fingers flying across his control pad. "Deploying sonic traps. Buy you time." But Ilara knew this wasn't an enemy that could be distracted easily. She fired 2 clean shots, both silenced, hitting the creature square in the chest. It barely flinched. The thing let out a roar, charging. Ilara gritted her teeth. "Sienna." From the rooftop, a crack echoed softly. Sienna's bullet struck the creature in the head, causing it to stagger. Not fall. Just stagger. "Elara, fall back!" Kale called from the alley. Elara sprinted, weaving between crumbling walls and debris as the massive zombie thundered after her. Riker's traps flickered to life, glowing discs that emitted shrieking sound waves, slowing the creature for a heartbeat. Just enough. As Elara ducked into the alley, Kale triggered a preset charge, collapsing part of the wall behind them. Dust and stone rained down, cutting off the monster's path. Panting, Elara regrouped with the others. The teens were shaking but safe. "That's not a normal infected," Kale muttered grimly. "No," Elara agreed, wiping sweat from her brow. "It's something else. And if these things are showing up now..." She let the sentence hang in the air. In the distance, the creature let out another frustrated roar, shaking the ruins. Elara's earpiece buzzed. "HQ wants a report," Riker said quietly. "They're tracking unusual mutations across the region. We're not the only ones seeing them." Elara's eyes hardened. "Then we push back harder." She glanced at the teens, then at her squad. From the shadows, they had struck, swift, unseen, and precise. But this was just the beginning. A larger war was brewing in dead America. And the Obsidian unit was ready to turn the tide. Night settled deeper over the ruins of Harbor's End, the heavy fog thickening into a choking blanket. Elara Vance led the rescued teens through the shattered streets, her senses sharp. Every cracked window, every half-collapsed doorway seemed to whisper danger. Behind her, Kale stayed close, his twin blades now sheathed but his fingers twitching, ready. Sienna moved on the high ground, stepping silently across rooftops, her sniper rifle scanning every corner. Riker, as always, watched from his portable command rig, monitoring their path through thermal and sonar sensors. They weren't heading to any ordinary safe zone. The Obsidian unit had something most humans didn't, a hidden base, carved deep into the underground tunnels beneath the city. "Riker, status on the route ahead?" Elara asked softly into her mic. "Hold up," Riker replied, his voice tense. "I'm picking up motion near Sector 12. Could be more infected, but there's something weird." Elara frowned. "Define weird." "Their movement patterns. It's not random shuffling. It's coordinated." Elara's stomach tightened. Zombies didn't coordinate. At least, they never used to. "Change course. We're not risking the kids," she ordered. "Take us through Sector 9. Kale shot her a quick glance. "That's tunnel territory." "I know." Sector 9 was a maze of collapsed metro tunnels, dark, unstable, and often crawling with infected. But it was better than walking straight into an organized group of the undead. The teens stumbled after them, exhaustion weighing on their thin frames. Elara slowed her pace slightly, checking on the youngest, a girl named Mira. She was barely 10, her freckled face pale under the flickering light of Elara's wrist lamp. "Almost there, Mira," Elara murmured, offering a quick smile. "Stay close to Kale." Mira nodded, clutching a small teddy bear to her chest as if it were the only thing holding her together. They reached the tunnel entrance, a gaping hole in the ground, half covered by twisted metal. Kale knelt first, scanning the dark with his sharp eyes. "Clear," he whispered. One by one, they slipped inside, their boots crunching softly on debris. The air was damp, the scent of mold and rust heavy. Elara's earpiece crackled faintly. "Picking up faint heat signatures down there," Riker warned. "Small, scattered. Could be rats, or worse." Elara signaled for silence, raising a clenched fist. Kale took point, leading the group carefully. Sienna stayed at the rear, eyes constantly flicking behind them. As they moved deeper, the tunnel walls narrowed, and the light from above vanished completely. Only the soft glow of their equipment lit the way. Suddenly, a soft scraping noise echoed ahead. Elara froze. Kale raised his hand, silently drawing his blades. A figure emerged from the shadows, not a zombie, but a man. Thin, dirty, wearing patchwork armor made from old sports gear. His eyes were wild, darting between the Obsidian team and the kids. "Stay back," the man hissed, brandishing a rusty pipe. "They're watching. They're down here." Elara held up her hands calmly. "We're not here to hurt you." "Who's watching?" The man trembled. "They, the smart ones. They control the others. They're learning." His voice cracked. "We can't hide anymore. They know everything down here." Suddenly, his eyes widened in horror. Behind him, two tall shapes stepped out of the darkness. Not zombies, not exactly. Their bodies were thin but unervingly agile, their movements too fast, too deliberate. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their limbs seemed to twitch with unnatural speed. "Elara, incoming!" Riker's urgent voice snapped in her ear. But it was already too late. The strange creatures lunged, grabbing the terrified man before anyone could react. With horrifying precision, they dragged him back into the shadows, his screams echoing briefly before being cut off. Kale moved to pursue, but Elara yanked him back. "No! Protect the kids." The creatures didn't chase. They simply disappeared, slipping back into the tunnels like phantoms. Sienna's voice crackled over the radio. "I don't like this, Elara. These aren't normal infected." Elara exhaled slowly, heart pounding. She turned to the kids. "We move. Now." They picked up the pace, weaving through the tunnel maze until, at last, they reached a heavy metal door embedded in a concrete wall. Elara tapped a hidden code into the panel. With a hiss, the door slid open, revealing a reinforced underground chamber lined with monitors, weapons racks, and supply crates. Riker was waiting inside, pulling off his headset. "That was too close," he muttered. "Did you see those things?" "Yeah," Elara said grimly. "I saw them." Kale closed the door behind them, locking the bolts tight. The kids collapsed onto the floor, shivering and exhausted. Sienna came in last, her face pale. Those creatures, they weren't just fast. They were hunting. Elara ran a hand through her dark hair, trying to calm her racing mind. She had been in dozens of missions, fought countless infected. But this was something new. "We need to report to HQ, she said finally. "Whatever's happening here, it's bigger than Harbor's End." Outside, in the pitch-black tunnels, a pair of glowing eyes watched silently from the shadows, unblinking and patient. The war in Dead America was evolving. And the Obsidian unit was about to face a threat unlike anything they'd ever known. Inside the underground base, tension crackled like electricity in the air. Elara Vance stood over the central table, maps and sensor readouts spread before her. Riker worked furiously at his console, running back the footage from their helmet cams. Kale leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, face tight with frustration. Sienna cleaned her rifle in the corner, but her sharp eyes flicked up often, restless and uneasy. The rescued teens had been given food, blankets, and a safe corner to rest, but even in sleep, their faces were drawn and pale, shadows under their eyes. Elara exhaled slowly. "Run it again, Riker." The monitor replayed the moment, the shadowed figures lunging from the tunnel, snatching the desperate man and vanishing with terrifying speed. Elara watched it frame by frame. "They're too fast," Sienna muttered, shaking her head. "That's not normal infected behavior." "It's not," Elara agreed. She tapped the screen. "Look here, the way they move. Coordinated, calculated. They didn't just grab the man because they were hungry. They were eliminating a witness." Kale stepped closer. "And they let us go." Riker's fingers danced over the keyboard. "Which means they were assessing us, not hunting us, yet." The weight of those words settled over the room like a heavy stone. Elara straightened, determination sharpening her features. We need intel. We're not fighting blind against an enemy we don't understand. Kale gave a small, almost feral grin. Recon mission? Yeah, Elara confirmed. We track them, we find their nest, and we figure out what we're really up against. Before anyone could respond, an alarm blared through the base. Beep. 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 Riker spun to his console. What the hell? Perimeter breach. Southeast side. Sienna was already moving, slinging her rifle across her back. No way they followed us. We were clean. Kale drew his blades. We'll find out. Elara led the charge, sprinting down the narrow tunnel that led to the outer door. The metal creaked under pressure, something was outside, pressing hard. They took defensive positions. On my mark, Elara whispered. 3, 2. Suddenly, a loud pounding echoed from the door, but it wasn't claws or fists. It was a patterned knock. The team froze. Elara approached cautiously. Who's there? A faint voice came through, muffled but urgent. Friendly. I swear. I know about the smart ones. Please let me in. Elara exchanged a sharp glance with Kale. It could be a trap, but if someone out there had information, they couldn't ignore it. She keyed the door. With a hiss, the outer hatch slid open just enough to reveal a figure in a battered tactical jacket, goggles, and a heavy scarf over their mouth. The figure stumbled in, gasping. Close it now. Elara sealed the door. Who are you? The stranger pulled off the scarf, revealing a young woman, maybe mid-20s, her face smudged with dirt, eyes sharp and haunted. Name's Arden, she panted. I was part of Recon Squad Delta. We were investigating reports of advanced infected in this sector, but they wiped out my team. Sienna narrowed her eyes. Advanced infected? Arden nodded. They're calling them alphas. Smarter, faster, stronger. And they're evolving, learning to coordinate attacks, set traps. That's why they left you alive earlier. Elara's stomach twisted. They're testing us. Yes, Arden confirmed grimly. And you're not the only target. They've been hitting outposts across the region. Picking off the strongest defenders, one by one. Riker joined them, breathless. HQ's been going dark in sections. We thought it was random collapse, but this. Arden looked between them. I know where they're nesting. But it's not pretty. Elara steadied herself. Where? Arden hesitated. The old military research complex on the East Ridge. Before the fall, they were running bioenhancement experiments there. Rumors say the first wave of infection started inside those labs. Kale gave a low whistle. Of course. That's where the alphas were born. Sienna checked her rifle. So, what's the plan? Storm the place? Elara shook her head. Not yet. We need more than muscle. We need a strategy. Arden added quietly, and we need to move fast. The alphas aren't just spreading, they're organizing. It's only a matter of time before they launch a coordinated assault on human strongholds. A heavy silence fell over the group. Elara drew in a deep breath. All right. We gear up, we scout the complex, and we find out what's really happening. If we're going to survive this war, we need to understand our enemy. Kale's grin sharpened. Finally, something interesting. But Elara couldn't shake the chill creeping up her spine. Because in dead America, knowledge didn't always mean power, sometimes, it meant a death sentence. And as the shadows deepened outside, the Obsidian unit prepared to walk straight into the lion's den. The night was cold, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones no matter how many layers you wore. Elara crouched near the ruined edge of the east ridge, her binoculars focused on the silhouette of the old military research complex. Faded signs warned trespassers to stay away, but no one in their right mind would dare approach, not anymore. Behind her, Cale adjusted the straps on his harness. "You sure this is smart?" he asked in a low voice. Elara gave a small smirk. "You're asking me that now?" Sienna tightened the laces on her boots. "We've walked into worse." Arden, the newcomer, pulled out a battered tablet and tapped the cracked screen. This place was designed to be self-contained, with underground labs, weapon storage, and its own power grid. If the Alphas are nesting here, they're doing it for a reason. Riker slid down beside them, carrying a portable sensor array. "Motion detectors are live. I've set up remote tripwires across the entry points." He looked at Elara. "This place gives me the creeps." "It should," she replied. "That's why we're going in." Cale grinned. "Just the four of us against an army of super-evolved infected? Sounds like a fair fight." "5 of us," Arden corrected softly, though the weight in her voice showed she knew they were still hopelessly outnumbered. Elara gave the signal. "Let's move." They slipped through the perimeter fence, keeping low. The outer buildings were half collapsed, rusted girders exposed, windows smashed. Vines and black mold crept along the walls. Every step crunched softly on broken glass and debris. As they approached the main entrance, Elara raised a fist, signaling them to halt. The double doors hung slightly ajar, and the faint glow of emergency lights flickered inside. "Looks abandoned," Sienna murmured. "Exactly what they want us to think," Arden replied. Riker set a small drone onto the ground, activating its camera feed. The screen strapped to his wrist flickered to life as the drone zipped inside, hovering through the dark halls. For a moment, nothing. Just dust motes swirling in the air, remnants of a once bustling military installation. Then the feed glitched. "What was that?" Sienna hissed. Riker squinted. "Something just crossed the hall, fast." Elara didn't hesitate. "Weapons up. We go in, slow and careful." They entered, boots making almost no sound on the cracked tile floor. The walls were lined with broken monitors, warning signs in faded red, bullet holes marking past chaos. Suddenly, a faint noise echoed from the far end, a soft clicking sound, unnatural and rhythmic. Cale's hand tightened on his blades. "I don't like that." Arden's face had gone pale. "It's how they communicate." Elara turned sharply. "What?" "The Alphas," Arden whispered. "They click, like echolocation. It helps them hunt, and coordinate." A cold chill swept over the team. Elara motioned for them to keep moving. They reached the central lab doors, reinforced steel with a keypad. To their surprise, the panel flickered to life as they approached. "Someone's still maintaining the power grid," Riker muttered. Arden stepped forward. "Let me try." She punched in a code. With a soft hiss, the doors slid open. Inside, the lab was a nightmare. Broken glass, overturned tables, shattered containment pods, and bloodstains, long since dried, marking the walls and floor. Elara swept the room with her flashlight. Whatever happened here, it wasn't an accident. Cale crouched beside one of the cracked pods. This was no ordinary lab. They were growing something. Suddenly, the motion detectors on Riker's console lit up, multiple signals converging on their location. "They know we're here." Riker barked. Elara cursed. "Fall back to the corridor." The team rushed back into the hall, weapons raised. The clicking intensified. Then, out of the darkness, they saw them. Alphas. Sleek, fast, their skin pale and stretched over wiry frames, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. But it was their movements that chilled the team to the bone, deliberate, calculating, and perfectly synchronized. Kale grinned fiercely. Finally, a real fight. Elara grabbed his shoulder. Stay focused. The first wave of alphas lunged forward. The team opened fire, bullets sparking in the dim light, but the creatures were terrifyingly fast, dodging with unnatural reflexes. Kale spun, blade slicing through one, but two more replaced it in an instant. Sienna's rifle cracked loudly, dropping another, but her ammo was running low. Riker cursed as one alpha tackled him, barely managing to shock it off with an electric charge. Arden grabbed Elara's arm. We can't win this. We need to retreat. Elara's mind raced. There's got to be a way to slow them down. Suddenly, her eyes fell on the ceiling, sprinkler system. Elara to Riker, can you trigger the fire suppression? Riker, face pale and bloodied, nodded. On it. As he hacked into the system, the alphas pressed closer, their claws scraping against armor, their eyes locked on the team. With a hiss, jets of freezing chemical mist burst from the ceiling, coating the alphas. The creatures screeched, recoiling, their flesh blistering under the sudden spray. Go! Elara shouted. The team sprinted down the corridor, lungs burning, hearts pounding. They burst through the outer doors, scrambling back across the ruined courtyard, the sounds of the enraged alphas echoing behind them. By the time they reached cover, they were gasping, shaking, barely holding it together. Elara leaned against a crumbling wall, chest heaving. Kale gave a ragged laugh. Well, that was fun. But Elara's face was grim. We saw what we needed. Arden nodded, eyes dark. They're not just evolving, they're organizing for war. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, the alphas were watching, and waiting. The group huddled inside the abandoned service tunnel beneath the ridge, breathless and shaken. Elara crouched near the entrance, watching the moonlit grounds outside through a cracked vent. They're not following us, Kale said softly, wiping blood off his blade. They're toying with us, Arden murmured, hugging her knees. They want us to run. Sienna dropped her pack, sliding down the tunnel wall. We barely made it out alive, and you're telling me they let us escape? Riker worked furiously on his battered tablet, pulling up a scrambled satellite feed. I don't think it's random anymore. Their movements, their coordination, it's tactical. It's like they've got a general calling the shots. Elara's jaw tightened. If that's true, we need to find whoever's leading them, and take them out. Kale let out a dark chuckle. We're not exactly equipped to take on the Alpha King, if that's what you're suggesting. No, Elara replied sharply. We're equipped to scout, learn, and strike where it hurts. The group fell into a tense silence. For months, the humans had assumed the infected were just that, mindless predators. But tonight proved something far worse. These creatures weren't just evolving physically. They were becoming something else entirely. Elara stood, shaking off her exhaustion. We'll rest for an hour. Then we move. Outside, the wind howled softly over the ruins. Somewhere in the distance, the faint echo of clicking sounded, the language of the alphas. By dawn, they reached a crumbling overlook. From here, they could see the valley below, stretching out into the remains of what once had been a thriving military base. Now, it was overrun, swarms of infected moved like ants, patterns visible even from a distance. Kale whistled low. That's a lot. Riker zoomed in with his tablet camera. Look at their paths, they're fortifying the outer edges, guarding the approach. They're setting up defenses. Sienna frowned. Against who? We're the last organized human team within 50 miles. That we know of, Elara said, eyes narrowing. Arden pulled out a folded map, spreading it across a flat rock. If they're preparing defenses, it means they're expecting an attack. But from where? Suddenly, a voice crackled over their radio, a voice none of them expected to hear. Echo Team, this is command. Do you copy? Elara snatched up the radio. Command? We thought you were overrun. We were, the voice on the other end replied grimly. We regrouped at the secondary bunker, 50 miles west. We've been tracking the Alpha movement. We need your intel, and fast. Elara's heart pounded. There's a leader. Someone, something, is commanding them. We saw it firsthand. There was a pause on the other end. Then, that confirms our data. Listen carefully, you need to pull back to the bunker. We've got one shot to end this. The line crackled and died. Kale cursed. That's it? That's all they're giving us? Sienna shouldered her rifle. We can't just walk out of here. There's no way they'll let us leave without a fight. Elara clenched her fists. Then we fight smart. The descent through the valley was nerve-wracking. Every shadow felt alive, every gust of wind like a warning. The team moved in a tight formation, eyes scanning constantly. Suddenly, Arden froze. Wait. They all stopped. Arden pointed to a dark figure standing alone near the ruined checkpoint below. It wasn't moving. Kale squinted. That's not one of us. They slowly approached, weapons ready. As they drew closer, they realized it wasn't moving because it wasn't alive. A human soldier, or what was left of him, stood impaled on a metal stake, eyes wide, mouth frozen in a silent scream. Strapped to his chest was a crude sign, written in blood, "We see you." Elara's stomach turned. They're sending messages now. Suddenly, a rustling sound. The team spun, weapons raised. Out of the trees stepped a figure, but it wasn't an Alpha. It was a man. He wore scavenged armor, his face hidden beneath a visor. Slowly, he raised his hands. Don't shoot, he called softly. I'm not one of them. Elara narrowed her eyes. Then who are you? The man pulled off his visor, revealing a scarred face. Name's Jace. I'm part of the resistance. Your Echo Team, right? Kale raised a brow. Resistance? We thought everyone west was wiped out. Jace gave a small, grim smile. Not everyone. We've been fighting from the shadows, taking out key targets. We've been tracking you. Elara stepped forward. Why? Because, Jace said quietly, you're walking straight into a trap. The weight of his words settled heavily over the group. What do you mean, a trap? Sienna demanded. Jace glanced over his shoulder, eyes wary. The Alphas want you to return to the bunker. They want you to lead the remaining humans into one place, so they can wipe you out in one strike. Arden's face paled. How do you know this? Jace's expression hardened. Because we intercepted their signals. We cracked part of their communication. And we know this, there's a hidden commander, an Alpha unlike anything we've seen, faster, smarter, deadlier. And it's watching all of you. Elara's mind raced. The plan. The bunker. The false hope. They weren't just up against mindless monsters anymore. They were up against a strategy. And time was running out. The trees seemed to close in tighter as Elara led the group deeper into the forest, Jace moving beside her like a silent shadow. We need to stop, Arden whispered, glancing over her shoulder. We're too exposed out here. Elara shook her head firmly. Not until we know what we're walking into. Jace signaled them to a halt near a cluster of moss-covered boulders. He crouched, pulling out a worn map and laying it flat on a rock. The bunker's here, he pointed. And here, he tapped another spot farther north, is where we believe the hidden commander is operating. He's not just directing the Alpha attacks. He's watching you specifically. Kale frowned. Why us? Jace looked up grimly. Because you're the only team that's gotten close to exposing him. Riker tapped his fingers anxiously on his tablet. You're telling me this thing knows who we are? Yes, Jace said simply. He knows everything. A chill ran through the group. Ilara took a steadying breath. So, what's the plan? We can't walk into the bunker if it's a trap, and we can't keep running forever. Jace's eyes hardened. We don't run. We strike first. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the group crept toward the edge of the ravine where Jace claimed the enemy camp was hidden. Below, faint lights flickered, not firelight, but something eerily cold and artificial, pulsing in steady intervals. Shadows moved between the ruined buildings, but these were no ordinary infected. They moved with military precision, communicating silently, setting up defenses. Sienna exhaled slowly. They're organized. Riker zoomed his camera lens. Look at that. He pointed to a tall figure standing at the center, surrounded by smaller alphas. That has to be him, the commander. Ilara's pulse quickened. She could feel it, this wasn't just another alpha. This one radiated control, dominance. Arden whispered, how do we even get close? Jace gave a small smile. That's where the resistance comes in. He lifted a small device, pressing a button. Suddenly, a series of controlled explosions erupted on the far side of the ravine, sending plumes of smoke into the sky. Screeches filled the air as alphas rushed toward the disturbance. Jace nodded to Ilara. Now's your chance. Under the cover of chaos, the team descended carefully, weaving through the darkened ruins. Ilara's heart pounded as they neared the central building. Every creak, every whisper of wind felt amplified, as if the very ground was alive and aware. Inside, they moved silently through a maze of corridors, the air thick with rot and damp. Kale raised his fist, signaling the others to stop. Ahead, in a wide chamber, stood the hidden commander. Ilara's breath caught. He was tall, unnaturally tall, with a twisted, armored body that shimmered with strange, black scales. His eyes glowed faintly red in the darkness. And he wasn't alone. Flanking him were two alpha guards, each more monstrous than anything they'd faced before. Sienna's fingers tightened around her weapon. We can't take them all. Ilara whispered, we don't need to. She pointed to the makeshift command center behind the creature, a network of devices, wires, and signals pulsing with strange energy. We destroy that, and we cut off his control. Riker nodded, pulling out his compact EMP device. I can set it, but I'll need cover. Kale grinned. Leave that to us. The next few moments happened in a blur. Kale and Sienna launched a diversion, throwing smoke bombs and firing controlled bursts to draw the guards' attention. Ilara and Arden covered Riker as he sprinted toward the command center, heart hammering as he set the EMP. The hidden commander let out a guttural roar, turning with terrifying speed, his eyes locking onto Riker. Now! Ilara shouted. Riker slammed the activation switch. A pulse of blue energy rippled through the room, sparking and shattering the alien tech. The Alpha guards convulsed, screaming as their connection to the commander flickered. The commander himself staggered but didn't fall. Instead, he straightened slowly, his eyes burning brighter. You think, you can stop me? The voice was not fully human, not fully Alpha, but something in between. Ilara's blood ran cold. He's evolving, Arden whispered. The team regrouped outside, hearts racing. That was supposed to work, Riker gasped, clutching his side. Jace appeared beside them, his face pale. You don't understand. The commander's not just using the tech, he is the tech. He's merged with it. Kale spat. Great. So what now? Ilara squared her shoulders. We don't run. We finish this. She looked at Jace. You said you've been fighting from the shadows. Do you have the firepower to bring this place down? Jace gave a slow nod. Not much, but enough to level the building. Elara met his gaze, determination burning in her eyes. Then we set the charges, lure him in, and end this once and for all. Above them, the night sky seemed to tremble, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Because now, they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to reclaim the future. The forest was eerily silent as Elara, Jace, and the others crouched by the ravine, staring back at the glowing wreckage of the command center. Smoke twisted into the night sky, and the faint hum of destroyed tech pulsed through the ground. But the hidden commander was still standing. He's not human, Riker muttered, his voice shaking. That thing shouldn't still be moving. Elara's hands trembled, but she forced herself to stay steady. We can't let him regroup. We have to hit now. Jace gave a sharp nod. We've rigged charges all around the central chamber. If we lure him in, we can collapse the whole complex on top of him. It's risky, but it's our only shot. Sienna checked her rifle. What about his alpha guards? They're weakened since we hit the control tech, Jace said. But they'll come back. We need to be faster. Arden glanced over at Elara. Who's going to bait him in? The group fell silent. Elara took a breath. I will. Kale stepped forward immediately. No, we all go in. We do this together. Elara gave him a small, fierce smile. That's why I'm counting on you, to cover me. They moved swiftly through the ruined tunnels, planting the remaining charges, carefully avoiding patrols of wandering infected. Each step closer made Elara's chest tighten. She could feel the hidden commander's presence, like a cold wind crawling up her spine. Finally, they reached the central chamber again. The commander stood at the far end, surrounded by flickering lights and shadows. His armored body seemed more twisted now, his arms elongated, his face a disturbing mix of man and alpha. You came back, the voice rasped, echoing through the chamber. How predictable. Elara stepped forward, heart pounding. We're ending this. The commander tilted his head. You can't end what has already begun. Suddenly, with a burst of speed, he lunged. Elara dove aside as Kale and Sienna opened fire, their shots barely slowing the monstrous figure. Arden hurled an explosive, blowing part of the floor apart, but still the commander advanced. Riker worked furiously at the detonator, sweat pouring down his face. Come on, just a little closer. The air trembled as the commander roared, slamming into the floor, cracking stone. His alpha guards, though weakened, charged from the shadows, shrieking. Elara fired round after round, ducking behind broken pillars, weaving between Kale and Sienna's cover fire. Now, Riker, she shouted. With a final click, Riker slammed the detonator. The explosives ignited in a brilliant flash, the ground shaking violently. The entire chamber shuddered, stone and metal raining down. Elara felt the shockwave hit her, flinging her backward as the walls collapsed inward, burying the commander in a mountain of rubble. Dust choked the air, and the world seemed to freeze. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Elara pushed herself up, coughing hard. Is everyone okay? Kale's voice answered through the dust. I'm here. Sienna groaned nearby. I'm good. I think. Riker stumbled over, wiping blood from his temple. That better have worked. Arden limped up beside them, a small grin tugging at her mouth. That was too close. Jace emerged last, his face set. We did it. Or so they thought. A deep, resonating crack split the air. The rubble shifted. And then, from beneath the wreckage, a clawed hand burst free. Elara's stomach dropped. No. The hidden commander pulled himself up, his body burned, twisted, but still alive. His glowing red eyes locked onto Elara, fury radiating from him like heat. Jace swore under his breath. He survived, even that. The commander's voice rasped through the smoke. You cannot kill me. I am the future. For the first time, real fear flickered in Jace's eyes. We're out of time. Elara gritted her teeth. We're not done yet. As the team backed away, Kale tapped his radio urgently. We need extraction, now. Riker checked his gear, then froze. Wait, where's Sienna? They turned to see Sienna, standing between them and the commander, weapon raised, face pale but determined. Sienna! Elara shouted. Sienna gave them a faint smile. Go. I'll buy you time. Before anyone could stop her, she sprinted forward, firing shot after shot, drawing the commander's attention as the others retreated. Elara's chest ached, but Kale grabbed her arm. We can't lose you too. They ran, the sounds of gunfire and roaring behind them, hearts breaking but knowing there was no other choice. Outside, the Resistance's extraction team arrived, battered vehicles, armed fighters, ready for one last stand. Jace pulled Elara aside. There's something you need to know. This commander, he's not alone. There's another force rising, deeper in dead America. Elara's breath caught. You mean, this is just the beginning? Jace's eyes darkened. Yes. And if we don't act fast, we'll all be consumed. As the vehicles roared to life and the survivors sped away into the night, Elara looked back one last time. The battlefield was far from over. The real war was only just beginning. Part 8, The Rising Storm. The safe house was a hidden bunker deep beneath the old city ruins, shielded by layers of concrete and steel. Elara sat slumped against the wall, her clothes torn and face streaked with grime. Kale paced nearby, his hands clenched. Outside, rain lashed the crumbling streets, thunder rumbling like the growl of some sleeping giant. We lost Sienna, Kale said quietly, his voice raw. We barely escaped. And that thing, that monster. Elara closed her eyes briefly, remembering Sienna's last stand, the defiant look, the final shots, the moment she vanished behind the collapsing rubble. We honor her by finishing this, Elara whispered, forcing herself upright. We can't stop now. Jace entered, his expression grim. We have a problem. Arden looked up sharply. What now? Jace tossed a crumpled map onto the table. Intel just came in from our scout teams. That commander wasn't just a freak experiment. There's another unit, a hidden force massing outside the dead America border. Larger, more organized. Elara frowned. How large? Jace's jaw tightened. Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. And they're moving. Riker leaned in, scanning the map. Wait, they're heading for the east sector. That's where the last major human settlement is. Kale slammed his fist on the table. We have to warn them. Jace shook his head. By the time we get there, it'll be too late. We need to cut them off before they reach the settlement. Elara drew a deep breath. Then we set the next trap. Nightfall came quickly as the group sped through the darkened wasteland in stolen vehicles, weaving between abandoned cars and shattered highways. Radio chatter buzzed in their ears, resistance groups checking in, warning of enemy movements. Elara tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Jace, are you sure about this route? Jace adjusted the radar device on his lap. Positive. There's an old industrial dam up ahead. If we can lure the advancing force onto the lower levels, we can flood the entire sector and buy the settlement time to evacuate. Arden whistled softly. Flooding a dam. That's bold. Kale gave a grim smile. It's also suicidal. Riker chuckled dryly. Since when have we played it safe? As they neared the dam, massive shadows loomed, broken towers, rusting pipelines, overgrown control stations. The resistance fighters moved swiftly, planting explosives, setting charges, and rerouting old power lines. Elara stood on the overlook, binoculars raised. In the distance, the dark wave approached. Thousands of infected, not the mindless wanderers of the early outbreak, but trained, armored units led by the monstrous Alpha commanders. They moved with eerie coordination, their glowing eyes fixed forward, their clawed hands gripping crude weapons. "Time to go," Jace murmured, checking his watch. "We hit them hard, then pull back to the upper ridge." Elara nodded, heart hammering. "Let's finish what we started." As the first enemy scouts reached the dam, Kale fired a signal flare, a streak of red light tearing through the sky. Arden and Riker unleashed a barrage of sniper fire, dropping the front line. Explosions rocked the dam's lower platforms as charges detonated, collapsing walkways and sending infected plunging into the water below. Elara led the second wave, sweeping in from the flank, her team cutting through the enemy's outer ranks with precision. For a brief moment, it worked. The infected hesitated, thrown into disarray. But then, the hidden commander appeared. He stood atop a crumbling tower, his burned, twisted form silhouetted against the lightning-lit sky. With a guttural roar, he raised one clawed arm, and the infected surged forward, faster, more ferocious, as if driven by his will. Elara felt the shift instantly. "Pull back. Fall to the upper ridge." Kale grabbed her arm. "We need to blow the dam now." Jace's voice crackled over the radio. "Elara, we have a problem. The manual detonator's offline, the only way to trigger it is from inside the control chamber." Elara's stomach dropped. The chamber was already overrun. Without a word, Elara sprinted toward the dam, weaving through falling debris, dodging claws and gunfire. Kale shouted after her, but she didn't stop. Inside the control chamber, the walls shuddered as infected pounded on the doors. Sparks rained from broken wires, and alarms blared a shrill, rising wail. Elara reached the central console, fingers flying across the cracked controls. Come on," she muttered, overriding safety locks, bypassing dead circuits. Outside, she could hear the pounding growing louder, the screeches of Alpha guards closing in. Just a few more seconds. The system let out a final beep, and the floodgates groaned. Elara slammed the final switch. The dam's walls shuddered as massive volumes of water burst free, roaring through the lower sectors like an unstoppable wave. Infected shrieked as they were swept away, towers crumbled, platforms shattered. On the ridge, Kale and the others watched as the advancing force was torn apart, their momentum broken. But inside the control chamber, Elara stumbled back, coughing, watching water pour in through broken panels. The doors buckled, and the hidden commander appeared, forcing his way inside, glowing eyes locked on her. Elara raised her weapon, knowing it was too late to run. "Ready for part 9? The final showdown is near, tell me when to continue." Water surged around Elara's ankles as she backed away, heart hammering, weapon trembling in her hands. The hidden commander stood in the doorway, his towering figure half-lit by the flickering control room lights. His skin was a grotesque patchwork of armored plates, metal spikes, and infected tissue. He tilted his head, as if curious. Elara's mind raced. She knew she had no escape. But maybe, just maybe, she could buy the others enough time. Outside, the dam roared with collapsing concrete. The flood was working. The settlement might survive, but only if the commander was stopped here. Elara raised her rifle, aiming straight at the creature's skull. "Come on, then." The hidden commander snarled and lunged. On the ridge, Kale watched in horror as the dam's lower sections were engulfed by the flood. "Elara's still down there," he shouted. Jace grabbed his arm. "We can't go back. The whole structure's coming down." Kale yanked free. "I'm not leaving her." Without waiting, he sprinted toward the access bridge, weaving through falling debris. Arden cursed under his breath. He's going to get himself killed. Jace clenched his fists. We cover him. That's what we do. The remaining team members fell in line, racing after Kale as the dam shuddered and groaned under the pressure. Inside, Elara slammed her last magazine into the rifle and fired. Bullets ripped into the commander's chest, but he barely flinched. With a roar, he smashed aside the console, sending sparks flying, then lunged again. Elara rolled aside, feeling the wind of his claws slice past her. She scrambled behind a steel beam, panting. There had to be a weakness. There was always a weakness. Her eyes darted to the exposed cables overhead, still sparking with unstable power. She took a deep breath. I hope this works, she muttered. Kale burst into the control sector, slipping on the wet floor, coughing as steam hissed from broken pipes. Elara, he shouted. He heard the clash of metal, the roar of the creature, the crackle of electricity. Jace and Arden arrived behind him, weapons drawn. There. Arden pointed. Through the shattered observation window, they could see Elara, darting between beams as the monster smashed after her. Kale didn't hesitate. He ran. Elara leapt onto the main console, grabbing the hanging cable. Electricity danced across her arm, searing her skin, but she held on tight. As the commander lunged, she swung the live wire directly into his chest. The effect was instant. The creature let out a guttural, inhuman scream as energy surged through his body. Sparks exploded from his armor, his limbs convulsing violently. Elara gritted her teeth, pushing harder, even as her own strength faltered. Come on, go down. Kale reached the doorway just as the commander collapsed to one knee, smoking and twitching. Elara, he shouted, rushing forward. Elara dropped the cable, staggering, half-conscious. Kale caught her, pulling her close. You're insane, he breathed, a shaky grin spreading across his face. Had to, try something, Elara managed weakly. Jace and Arden covered them as the commander's massive body finally slumped forward, crashing into the rising water. But just as they turned to leave, a deep, rattling growl echoed through the chamber. They all froze. The commander's hand twitched. Then his head lifted, eyes glowing brighter than before. He's still moving? Arden whispered in disbelief. Jace's face went pale. We need a bigger plan. Outside, the dam cracked open, water thundering through the valley. The infected army was broken, but not destroyed. Scattered units regrouped, their snarls and howls filling the night air. On the ridge, resistance fighters scrambled to hold the line, knowing they faced one final surge. Inside the control chamber, Kale looked at Elara, then at the rising water. If we blow the backup core, we can take him out, for good, Kale said grimly. Elara nodded faintly. Do it. Jace and Arden moved to the lower reactor, planting the last of their charges. We have 5 minutes to clear the blast radius, Jace called. The commander slowly stood, towering over them, his body sparking and steaming, more monstrous than ever. Kale lifted Elara in his arms. Time to go. They sprinted through the crumbling hallways, dodging falling beams and surging water. Behind them, the commander roared, his massive footsteps shaking the floor. Outside, under the stormy sky, the team burst free from the dam's upper levels. Jace hit the detonator. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then, boom. The entire lower dam erupted in a blinding explosion, sending a shockwave through the valley. Water, fire, and debris surged outward, swallowing the remaining infected and tearing the commander's body apart in a final, thunderous collapse. Kale shielded Elara as the blast rolled past them. When the dust settled, the dam was gone. And the infected horde was no more. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Jace let out a shaky laugh. We did it. Arden grinned. We actually survived. Kale gently set Alara down, brushing damp hair from her face. She smiled weakly. Not bad, for a bunch of misfits. In the distance, the sun broke through the storm clouds, casting light over the ruined land. But even as they celebrated, Alara's eyes darkened. Because she knew this was just one battle. Undead America's war was far from over. Ready for the big final part, Part 10? Let me know. It'll wrap up the story and set the stage for what's next. Part 10, The War is Not Over. The sunlight broke through the heavy clouds, casting long beams across the shattered dam and the flooded valley below. For the first time in weeks, the air was still, no screeches of infected, no distant gunfire, only the sound of rushing water and the sharp cries of gulls overhead. Alara sat on a rocky outcrop, legs trembling, watching the wreckage below. Her body ached, her wounds stung, but she was alive. Kale came to sit beside her, handing her a flask of water. Drink. You need it. She accepted it with a small smile. Thanks. Behind them, Jace and Arden were inspecting their weapons, making nervous jokes to cover their exhaustion. We really did it, Arden said, shaking his head in disbelief. Took down the hidden commander. Broke the biggest infected force we've ever seen. Jace gave a tired grin. Yeah, but why do I feel like we just poked a much bigger hornet's nest? Back at the temporary resistance camp, word was spreading fast. Survivors gathered around crackling radios, cheering as news came in. The Eastern Valley is clear. The dam is destroyed, the flood washed out their advance. The hidden commander is down. People hugged, cried, and clapped each other on the back. But even in the midst of celebration, the senior resistance leaders wore grim expressions. Because they all knew what Alara knew, victory here didn't mean victory everywhere. Alara limped into the command tent, Kale close behind. Inside, General Rowan, the grizzled, scar-faced leader of the resistance, stood over a table covered in maps and scattered reports. He looked up as they entered. You're the ones who took down the commander? Alara nodded quietly. Rowan's face softened for just a moment. Well done. But we have bigger problems. He gestured to the maps. The hidden commander was only one node in their network. We just intercepted intel suggesting there are more, enhanced infected, spread across dead America. They're not mindless. They're organized. Someone, or something, is controlling them. Kale frowned. But we thought the commander was running the show. Rowan shook his head. We think he was just a field leader. There's a command center out there, maybe even multiple, that we've never seen. Alara's stomach twisted. So, we won a battle, but the war's just beginning. Rowan met her eyes. Exactly. That night, as the camp settled under the stars, Alara sat by the fire with Kale, Jace, and Arden. They shared what little food they had, their laughter tired but genuine. Arden raised his tin cup. To the team that pulled off the impossible. Jace smirked. To Alara, for frying that monster. Alara smiled faintly. To surviving, one more day. They clinked their cups softly. But even as they celebrated, a cold wind stirred through the camp. In the darkness, just beyond the firelight, unseen eyes were watching. Far away, in a shadowed underground chamber, monitors flickered to life. Figures moved in the gloom, studying footage from hidden drones, images of the destroyed dam, the drowned infected, the resistance fighters standing triumphant. A tall, masked figure stood at the center of the room, hands clasped behind its back. They think they've won, a distorted voice murmured. Another figure approached. Orders, Commander. The tall figure turned slightly. Send in the next wave. It's time they learned this is no longer just a war for territory. On the screens, new shapes appeared, grotesque, towering, armored forms unlike anything the resistance had yet faced. The figure's eyes gleamed behind its mask. This is a war for extinction. Back at camp, Elara stirred uneasily in her sleep. Her dreams were filled with shadowy shapes, glowing eyes, and a chilling voice whispering her name. She jolted awake, heart pounding, eyes wide. Kale sat up next to her, concerned. "What is it?" Elara swallowed hard. I think something's coming." Kale nodded grimly. "We'll be ready." The next morning, a scout arrived breathless at the command tent. "Movement on the northern ridge," he gasped. It's not like before. These things, they're bigger, faster, smarter." Elara, Kale, Jace, and Arden were already gearing up. Rowan looked at them, his jaw tight. "Looks like your team is up again." Elara tightened the straps on her gear, her eyes steely. "We'll stop them." Kale clapped her shoulder. "From the shadows, we strike." The team exchanged a fierce, knowing look. No matter how dark the enemy, no matter how hopeless the odds, they would keep fighting. Because dead America wasn't dead yet. And as long as they stood together, there was still a chance to turn the tide. Far in the distance, a new horde began its march. The war was far from over. But so were the resistance fighters. And from the shadows, they would strike again. White heavy checkmark complete 10-part story delivered. If you want, I can help write a follow-up series, create a spin-off, or even develop character backstories or side missions. Want me to set that up? Let me know.